to Employment Law Today. I'm your host, Eric Sauver. I'm an employment law and business law attorney, and I host this live weekly talk radio show and this live video broadcast every Tuesday night from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where I have guests who discuss some of the most interesting, novel, and timely issues and challenges that business owners and employers are facing during these trying times. And in that spirit of the show, I'm very pleased tonight to have with us a special guest, Aaron Levine, CEO and founder of the LG Insurance Agency. Aaron, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be able to be here with you today. It's been a long time coming, and glad we're able to go live right now and talk about what's going on in my world, I guess.
Absolutely. And our two worlds very much overlap. Yours in the insurance and also with employment practice insurance, and mine with employment law. So there's definitely a lot going on for all of us out there listening too. But absolutely, Aaron. I think I'll start by just giving more of a little introduction of you for our audience before we delve into our topic tonight. And our topic tonight, folks, is we're talking about the employment practice liability insurance for employers, what you need to know. And so my guest tonight is Aaron Levine, CEO and founder of the LG Insurance Agency, a boutique full-service insurance agency located in Long Branch, New Jersey, that opened in 2009. The agency has insurance experts to provide local and regional expertise for personal, business, and various specialty insurance needs. Aaron Levine has a Bachelor of Science degree in Marketing Management from Syracuse University, where he was also active in the Sigma Alpha Epsilon fraternity and graduated in 2002. In 2008, Aaron graduated from Monmouth University with a master's in business administration. Aaron is an avid triathlete and marathoner, having completed Ironman, in 2008 at the Ford Ironman in Florida. Community and charity are very important to Aaron, which is reflected in the many hats he wears. He is the vice chairman of Fulfill Food Bank of Monmouth and Ocean Counties, the secretary of PIA, Professional Insurance Agents of New Jersey, as well as the past president of Greater Long Beach Chamber of Commerce. Giving back to the community is at the center of who Aaron Levine is. But his favorite accomplishment, I can relate to this, is being a proud dad, a proud girl dad, I should say, in Aaron's case, to his two daughters, Elle and, is it Daria?
Dare, straight, Dare. It's pronounced dare, like I dare you, just spelled a little different.
Okay, that's one thing I didn't ask you before the show, I think. The only part I missed in our discussion conversation. Ellie and Dare, excellent. All right, so, we're talking again about, EPLI, Employer Practice Liability Insurance, what business owners need to know as our topic tonight, folks. And really this comes down to the fact that, the employer-employee relationship, it's a cornerstone of any business. But what happens when things go wrong? What happens when an employee accuses an employer of sexual harassment, discrimination, failure to promote, or fostering a hostile work environment? Most employers don't want to think about these scenarios, but in reality, business owners are statistically more likely to be sued by an employee, that's true, than any vendor, customer, supplier, or third party. High legal costs, lost time, and the court of public opinion all contribute to the high overall cost of dealing with claims of company misconduct from an employee. So on tonight's episode of Employment Law Today, please join me and my guest, our guest tonight, insurance agency founder Aaron Levine, on a discussion of the value and the benefit of having employment practices liability insurance, also abbreviated as EPLI. We'll be discussing what it is. What is it? When should a business owner consider purchasing EPLI? What is covered, what is not protected, and under what circumstances? Learn the answers to these questions on our show this evening. And with that, I will get into the questions, our nice, great discussion with our guest, Aaron. So, Aaron, the first question I asked all my guests, because I'm fascinated by the answer, is to tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself. But mainly, what inspired you to choose a career in insurance? And then what motivated you to prompt or to further found and create the LG Insurance Agency?
Man, I wish we could jump right into the heart of this conversation, because I get chills thinking about what we're going to talk about. And And here I am, a guy that sells paper for a living. I sell
Important
paper
paper.
contracts,
Yeah.
and I'm sitting with the expert that's reading, writing, reviewing those contracts, and really helping the employers behind the scenes when it hits the fans, and hopefully helping a little bit beforehand in some cases.
Oh, yeah.
Helping those business owners understand. But we're gonna get to that shortly, for sure. So listen, in 2007, while I was in graduate school,
Mhm.
I got licensed in insurance. I got licensed in real estate. I wanted to go into real estate because, let's face it, real estate is so much more sexy of a career than insurance. But we're all, no one, we're all not turning into Ryan Searhand here, although this was all before Ryan Searhand and $1 million listings. But in 2008, when I was graduating and the economy was in a bad place,
Yeah.
I was making no money, right? So there's two things that thrive in recession and in prosperity, and that's liquor and insurance, right? We always need our insurance. It's required. Much of it is required by law. There's recently some new legislation being proposed that should be signed off on soon. That's going to require all business owners to have business insurance. That's a totally different topic, but that's one step in the right direction. I think they should have EPLI and cyber more than they need general liability, but we'll lobby for that separately. But so I chose to go the insurance route, and I started selling commodity, right? I would represent some insurance companies. I would work very hard to get contracts and build myself a name, but I was selling a commodity-based product at that time, which everybody needed, and I figured I could make myself a living. Check that box. That was easy, right? So then taking it to the next level, becoming a consultant, and being an advisor, and being a subject matter expert, and being able to speak with folks like yourself, and and guide businesses appropriately of all sizes, small, medium, large, and families as well, along with for their needs. I have my CIC, which is Certified Insurance Counselor. I'm currently working to get my CRM, right? For some reason, I love school as much as I hated school. I still love school, and the continuing education. I'm not just clicking slides to get my required credit hours. I want to continue to better myself, and these conversations do that as well, right? So I've advanced myself and my business from a one-person shop to now we are 13 people strong. We're 14 years or so going. And we're having a good time, and we're doing the best that we can do to help businesses and individuals and families along with their insurance portfolios. Times are tough in this inflationary environment, which we're going to get into, because that's also affecting the EPLI products that we're able to sell and help people purchase. But that's kind of the business in a nutshell. But I love community-focused organizations. I love giving back. And I love to give, right? I'm not one that's going to hide anything. My knowledge is free. I want to give it to anybody who's willing to take it, who's willing to then take the time that I'm willing to give, because the money is going to come back in return. I'm not worried about getting paid. I will get paid. I make a commission. Sometimes we charge fees for consulting. But when I can give back, I know the universe is going to just bring it back to myself. So charitable organizations, industry associations where I can help other agents and individuals thrive is really more my passion project. Call it a hobby, but I really enjoy doing that on the side, on top of the insurance stuff, and being home with the kids.
Right. Wow. It's interesting, Aaron, taking one of those later points you made first, as you were speaking about, not being stingy, being generous with your time, right? Trusting that there'll be enough that, be taken care of. I'm paraphrasing, financially and stuff. I was thinking to myself, wow, this guy really trusts the universe. And then you use that exact phrase, like trusting in the universe. I tend to share that approach as well. I think if we're too caught up, in like trying to get, paid for every minute or watching the clock, it comes out in how we interact with folks, but also just we don't give that spirit of service and community that you talked about there. And also just very interesting to hear your earlier story about real estate and then the recession hitting and having that, I guess, choice to make. And I think, it sounds like you made the right choice. I imagine that, owning a liquor store could be probably maybe a little repetitive and boring. Maybe it's not fulfilling, So there's two things.
Maybe it's still to come. I don't know what I want to do when I grow up.
There you go. Right. Still working on those, those things too, right? Absolutely, but good to also congratulate you, on success. Good to hear that, starting as a one person, one man operation and growing to 13. It's impressive. Yeah. So that's excellent. It's a good kind of basis to start, maybe leap into our conversation, which is about, right, this insurance. And mainly, I think we're really talking about employment practices liability insurance. So I guess my second question for you, Aaron, is you can tell our audience, explain to them, what is employment practices, liability insurance, or EPLI? Like, what is the scope of coverage? How does it work, and which businesses might benefit most from that kind of coverage?
Yeah, employment practices liability insurance, EPLI, if I had a choice to sell a business owner one policy, it potentially would be the EPLI policy or a cyber policy, depending on the type of business. But for our purposes today, it's definitely EPLI. You're more likely to have an employee or even a third party sue you as a business owner, as a business, than you are your building burning down or somebody suing you because of some other negligence, although we have plenty of those claims that come through as well. Sure. But especially during the COVID era, right, that we're living in the endemic, I guess, right now, in the recession times, there was a lot of claims during COVID for EPLI, which made the market for the product very volatile, and the inflationary environment we're in right now is not helping, right? So the employment practices liability really has two pieces if we break it down and keep it very simple. Has a first party liability and has the third party liability, right? So the employer, business owner, has employees and customers, right? Well, it doesn't even have to be a customer. It could be a third party, which could be a vendor, or it could be a guest on premise. It could be a guest to your website, right? We've seen the claims where if your website is not ADA compliant, there's an opportunity for you to be sued, because there are some lawyers out there that are, I'm going to use the word trolls. I
had this talk with them before that's, I think, accurate. Some of them are.
Some of them are, and they're out there seeking, to make a quick buck on somebody that's not compliant appropriately. But if you have an EPLI policy, in many cases, you're going to be protected from an ADA related issue as well as your employee related issue.
That's an interesting point you raised, Aaron, about, sort of the, and there are some trolling, unfortunately. I'll say opportunistic, but either word I think applies, right? Certain plaintiffs lawyers, I think either one, they're synonymous. But, I'll say that, like, I think a great point and a great example, the ADA compliant website. A lot of people don't have that. They don't realize that, if someone that can't use it or says they can't, they can try to sue you. I think it goes to that point that a lot of folks think, well, I don't break the law. I'm a good person. We're a good business. We all get along great. So we don't need this. And that's something I think, it's funny. We're, believe it or not, at our first commercial break already. Time flies when you're having fun. But when we come back, I would love to talk more about that point, including the fact that you might need this insurance and the scope of it, but also just you might need it even if you're, you think you're a stand-up gal or guy or person, or that, that just can come in handy. So when we come back, we'll talk more about that question, about what it is and how it works, EPLI that is, and we'll talk about, the benefits of businesses. So stick around. You're listening to Employment Law Today, maybe you're watching the show. I'm your host, Eric Sauber. Our guest tonight, Aaron Levine, the OG Insurance Agency, and we'll be right back.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant. And on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays, 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you on edge? Hey, we live in challenging, edgy times, so let's lean in. I'm Sandra Bargman, the host of The Edge of Every Day, which airs each Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc. Tune in live with me and my friends and colleagues as we share stories and perspectives about pushing boundaries and exploring our rough edges. That's The Edge of Every Day on Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Welcome back to Employment Law Today. I'm your host, Eric Sauber. I'm an employment law, business law attorney. And so this topic tonight is one that I'm quite familiar with, and I think it's a really important one for people to consider. You know, we need folks like Aaron Levine out there, you know, with employment practices, liability insurance, and other insurance to offer to protect your business, much like you have in your house, insurance against a flood or fire, God forbid, if a strikes, you're protected. You know, before the break, and that first commercial break always comes up quick on my guests. But before that break, I asked Aaron about, for those joining us late, I asked, you know, tell us a bit about EPLI, like the scope of coverage, how it works, and then which businesses might most benefit from it. So Aaron was talking about, you know, that in terms of how you can be sued. But yeah, the floor is all yours, Aaron. Love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so, you know, we were talking about the fact that it's one of my favorite policies for a business owner to purchase.
Yeah.
I prefer them to purchase an EPLI policy than a fire policy if I had a choice. But obviously we want everybody to be as well-rounded as possible, because again, I don't want to leave myself open to exposure when it comes down to it, right? It's the cost of doing business is increasing across the board, and we just need to make sure that we're well set up for it. But we got into the third-party liability piece a little bit of the employment practices liability policy, right? We have the first party and the third party. So talking about the third party is your vendors, your guests on premise. And that also ties into potentially an ADA compliance situation, right? If you don't have an ADA compliant facility, if you don't have a ramp, if you don't have an ADA compliant bathroom, right? There are things where you need to be as a business owner, unless you're grandfathered in, that's above my pay grade. Eric, if you want to talk on that, that's fine.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Regardless, as a business owner, if you are served, you have a duty to defend yourself, right? The defense coverage is going to be the most important, and probably the most expensive piece of these insurance claims for employment practices. Liability, whether it's ADA or it's harassment, wrongful termination, so on and so forth. So, you know, we want to make sure that a good policy is written that includes that third party. And we also want to include retroactive coverage in that third party as well, right? Granted, you can't buy a policy if you know you have a claim situation. That's committing fraud. However, you want to buy a policy and maintain retro coverage just in case something may have happened that you didn't know about. Statute of limitations is coming up close, and then you're served, right? So we want to make sure that the policies are well written, and maintaining consistent coverage is going to be important to then maintain those retroactive dates as well. It's going to expand your coverage beyond what it is as the policy periods continue to accumulate, because most EPLI policies are written on a claims made basis, right? So claims made is you have to have insurance when you are served. It's not occurrence. where if something happened 2 years ago, you were then served, it goes back to the old policy. Claims made policies, the claim is when you are served. Hence why then there's tails available. All right, I'm going off the deep end here a little bit.
That's right. Yep.
But I think this is such an important coverage, and I'm so passionate about it that I think every business owner should have it. Anybody that has employees, maybe your ones and twos probably don't, but the ones and twos, guess what? It's going to be $500, $600, $700 a year for those policies, right? The 100 to 1,000 or 1,000 to 10,000 employees, those policies are going to probably be a little bit more expensive, and they're probably going to have significantly higher deductibles.
Sure.
But as you get into those larger businesses, there may be some general counsel in-house that can start and be retained as part of the defense process, and you're able to vet the claims a little bit better, right?
Right.
But bigger businesses, bigger pockets, higher risk for a larger lawsuit potentially coming against you. So,
and also more employees, so there's more chance of more people might be suing. You might have an issue that impacts 35 people if them pay, say, wage discrepancy or issue came up, right? There's also that liability factor as well, I think.
That's a great comment, because I ran into a situation with a client. They're a restaurant chain. They have several units, and as they were growing, we were putting an EPLI policy at each individual location,
right?
Because they were very inexpensive. They were $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a year for these little policies with $5,000 or $10,000 deductibles. I had a situation where one employee was on the payroll at 2 different locations. An incident occurred that involved 2 different people.
Yeah.
I have 2 claims at 2 different locations, 2 different deductibles to meet, and what a pain in the neck it was. So, I learned my lesson. We got out of that one pretty inexpensively, so it wasn't a big deal. But now this same restaurant chain has one very large EPLI policy,
right,
with one large deductible that covers all of their locations. They're now, they're doing significant revenue. They're not 3 and 4 units anymore. But those occurrences that happens, claims that happen, right? Class action claims that can happen for, especially in the wage and hour space, can be very difficult. And if you need to defend multiple claims, well, hopefully you only have one deductible at that time.
I think it's great, Aaron, you talk about some kind of general concepts like the risk and what happens and why we need this type of coverage. And then you filled in the details, color there in terms of like how much deductible might be and how much their policy might cost, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 more for a bigger company. I think it's important. I think, people often don't hear the specific numbers for things like cyber insurance or insurance plan, policies, and they assume it's going to be some astronomical break the bank number, and then they're surprised, like, wait, cyber security insurance costs how much? Then a ransomware attack could destroy me for how much? So it's interesting when you factor that in, right? That it's we're talking about like small amounts here, especially comparatively. You pointed out a good point that litigation can be expensive, both in terms of the potential award to an employee and the legal fees, the cost, right, to defend. Because I know, as an employment lawyer and defending companies, I'd much rather they come to me for the compliance in advance. How can we get them up to speed? How can we train middle management not to create situations of implicit bias or microaggressions? How can we follow the wage and hour laws and such? But often people make mistakes, and those mistakes, even a good-natured one that's not malicious, can be very costly. Ask anybody who's been sued, like a restaurant, about overtime violations or tip pooling, discrepancies. So I just think, you raised some good points there about the scope. And I'm wondering if you can share with us all, like, in terms of what the policy might cover. So I'm a business and I have 12 employees, and, I get sued. Like, does it cover the attorney's fees to defend? Does it cover the award or some combination thereof?
Right. So policies are going to vary based on the insurance company issuing the policy, right? So putting my disclosure in there.
With the other caveats, yes. It's important though, Eric.
Am I safe, Eric, on this? Am I allowed to talk about it? Right. So every
Absolutely.
policy is going to be slightly different. And
Yeah.
that's where, as an employer working with your insurance agent, your professional who you trust, hopefully they have some knowledge in this space, or they have a resource like myself or somebody else that's an expert in this to reach back to and look at those different, those different coverage options in there, right? So
Right.
we'll take my insurance policy for my employment practices liability. So I practice what I preach. I have an employment practices liability insurance policy.
Excellent.
I pay, how much do I pay? I pay about $3,000 a year for my policy with a $10,000 deductible. Right. I'm a team of 13 on an international basis because I have virtual assistants that work for me full time in the Philippines. Right. So I want to make sure that I have worldwide coverage in there. I want to make sure the VA firm that I work with has their own coverage if something happens in their space, because I do hire them as a third party. I'm covered for harassment, discrimination, wrongful termination. We're seeing a lot of wrongful termination lawsuits. People get upset when they get fired. I don't know, man. It's New Jersey, right? Like,
Yeah.
I can't, are we allowed to hire and fire at will? Do we really need an excuse? But, I guess you do. I guess you have to document everything, right? And that's super important as an employer, is to have somebody that you can rely on to help you with compliance.
Yep.
Even as a small business, there's third parties. I interviewed on my podcast a couple of weeks ago, a woman named Joanne, and she works for a company called Puzzle HR. And they help
I know that company. Yeah.
with that compliance. And then they can become your HR go-to. And I also provide a service to many of my clients through a company called Mineral, where I give them, they get a 1-800 number, plus the ability to help get their employee handbook up to date. And it's a live handbook. So it's a living handbook. So it's constantly being updated by the Mineral team expert of experts behind the scenes. So it's a living handbook, because I'm not updating my handbook. I may have one from 25 years ago as an employer that you're blowing the dust off of, right? You're like, yeah, I have a handbook. So one of my questions when I'm in a prospect meeting is, can I see your employee handbook? But it very rarely happens that I actually get to see an employee handbook. So we want to help with that. We want to help bring that compliance in, because at the end of the day, I don't want a lawsuit, but how do I make your insurance less expensive? I make you compliant, and we make sure you're following some of the protocols that you're supposed to be following when it comes to hiring, firing, and other issues, and then give you that expert to be able to reach out to when you have a question, when there's an issue that arises, to be able to ask somebody like yourself or an HR professional, what do I do in this situation before I run my mouth? It's kind of one of those things that comes up. So, wrongful termination is a big one. Wage and hour things. You mentioned tip pooling before. Wage and hour is tricky.
Yes.
Right. If you're not paying your employees, well, you should. Right. What you agreed to pay them, you should be paying them.
Right.
But wage and hour, that's a sublimited defense in most cases. So you don't get the full $1 million. If you have $1 million policy, you get a sublimit of 100,000 for defense only. The award, you're on your own. If you lose on that one, it's because you were a scumbag. I mean, or you didn't know. It was an accident. Accidents happen, and you just have to make it right and make it and get things back up and running again. But so that's why the award's not going to be covered, because then people wouldn't be paying their employees. They just say, I'll save 25 grand. I'm not paying the employees. I'll pay my $5,000 deductible, and I'm off to the races.
No, I think it makes sense what you're saying, and you don't want that scenario. Also, it's like, I think I think you raised some good points there. And one, that employment law is such a complex area for business owners to follow. I mean, I read the updates in articles, in publications for employment law attorneys like myself, pretty much daily, and there's just so much going on. So you do, no doubt, you do have those unscrupulous business owners that are trying to get away with something, and then they're going to take that hit. They're going to have to pay that award. What I find fascinating too is that I was talking with a good colleague of mine today about employment law and how you can have a business that thinks they're doing everything right, and they didn't know that New York passed a law that says you have to give a certain type of notification on wages to a new hire. Or they didn't realize that if they're using artificial intelligence now in New York to help with the hiring process, has to be audited for bias, or else you can face penalties and fines and a lawsuit. But to your point, I think that it's interesting to see that the defense costs are covered, because that could be really high. But the second thing you said that I really appreciate was hearing about wanting to give your clients a comprehensive, like a full experience, meaning that you've got the HR folks in there to help with the situation. You've got the employment lawyers. I'm always recommending my people get with good insurance brokers, good accountants, good HR, because you need those people in your corner. Each serves a different purpose. And then the whole sort of like the puzzle pieces, if you will, come together, and then the protection is there. We're actually at a commercial break, if you can believe it. I know it just goes so fast when you're having a good conversation. But what I will say is that folks are listening to, and maybe you're watching Employment Law Today on Talk Radio NYC, you might be catching us also on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, etc. When we come back, I'll ask Aaron some great questions about how recent changes in the workforce, including the Great Resignation and quiet quitting and work from home, how is that impacting employer liability in the workplace? And we'll talk about trends that Aaron and I foresee in terms of litigation risk. So stick around, we'll be right back.
Are you passionate about the conversation around racism? Hi, I'm Reverend Dr. TLC, host of the Dismantle Racism Show, which airs every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc. Join me and my amazing guests as we discuss ways to uncover, dismantle, and eradicate racism. That's Thursdays at 11 o'clock a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a small business trying to navigate the COVID-19 related employment laws? Hello, I'm Eric Sauvert, employment law business law attorney and host of the new radio show, Employment Law Today. On my show, we'll have guests to discuss the common employment law challenges business owners are facing during these trying times. Tune in on Tuesday evenings from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc, now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Take two. Welcome back to Employment Law Today. I'm your host, Aaron Sauvert. I'm an employment law attorney. Our guest tonight, Aaron Levine, is the founder and CEO of OG Insurance Agency. And we're talking about EPLI, folks. Like we're really talking about Employment Practices Liability Insurance, and what it is, what it protects, what it does, why you need to have it. Aaron, I hear everything you're saying, and as you know, I do litigation defense for a living. I also do a lot of compliance and consulting in the employment labor law arena. And I've seen, how many clients come to me and say that they don't need this because they're a small business, right? They're a family owner. They're tight like family. They say, they can't imagine any of my employees, suing me at any point. Or they say, we're so small that people wouldn't sue us because they have bigger fish to fry. And I'm wondering, you've kind of touched upon that a bit with all these scenarios. So what are your thoughts about that from an insurance perspective?
You're getting sued.
Answer, but good to hear your.
You're getting sued. That's my answer. I don't care who you are or what you do. You're getting sued, right? My first EPLI claim that I ever experienced was a discrimination claim.
Mhm.
It was age discrimination
Mhm.
for a bar and restaurant nightclub, very swanky style nightclub
Yeah.
that was hiring cocktail waitresses. In the job description, they used the word girls. We are looking for girls as cocktail waitresses. Well, a 50-year-old woman went in and applied, and she didn't get the job. She then
Yeah.
took the job ad and said, I was not hired because they're only looking for girls. Hence, they're discriminating against me. Right? That was my first EPLI claim experience. And I think it paid out like $10,000, right?
Right.
Was it a setup? Who knows? But
Right.
it was a lesson learned is, and we're going back probably 8 or 9 years now. When EPLI was out there and things were happening,
Yeah.
but it wasn't as popular as it is today, and as important as it is today, right? So the age discrimination, race discrimination. I had a race discrimination one that paid out over $100,000. Come to find out that the victim, so to speak, was a repeat offender for filing lawsuits on race discrimination on the job site. Right.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable how things are out there and how sensitive you have to be to age, race, gender. I have not had a gender discrimination suit yet. I can only imagine that one is coming. Here's a good one. New York State requires a disability insurance policy to be purchased.
That's true. Yep.
The census report for the disability insurance policy asks, how many male employees do you have? How many female employees do you have? And we're in New York. So I went to a client in Brooklyn and said, how many males and how many females? She's like, I don't even know what gender they are. Was the response. Right? And she's like, I'm not going to go ask. So, I mean, you take this one further from that perspective. You're in New York and with gender policies, that's a tricky one.
Absolutely. It's like taking that a little further and unpacking it, if we will. It's like, I think what's important is that there certainly are, right? You've got your valid, legitimate discrimination cases and retaliation, whatnot. They definitely exist. And then I think there's like a wide spectrum. I think people often think of it as either, the most extremely egregious, smoking gun case of a horrific, a noose hanging or something like that, or a completely fabricated claim. And there's certainly that middle ground. There's the implicit bias and what's perceived. But to your point, though, I think that you do have a lot of folks who unfortunately are opportunistic, and they make it harder for those that are not, and they do file lawsuits and claims. What I hear from the client that was afraid to comment is perhaps the fear of knowing the gender of, let's say, people in case she has to fire someone, and if she does know the gender, it could be more notice of their protected class and therefore a possible suit. I think it gets very tricky. I do hear that a lot of companies are scared to get rid of poor performing employees, and I think they see how the laws can be, and also how some of the administrative agencies are that enforce these laws. A lot of them are very, very, very employee friendly. And I once had a case in the Department of Labor where I'll be short because I want to get to some of your questions, but I wish they had your insurance, because it was a case of alleged retaliation for opposing a certain labor practice that didn't happen, and the person was doing a horrible job, and they were the in-house accounting and bookkeeping, and there is empirical evidence that they had botched the books for months and months and caused all kinds of problems with taxes, being owed. The business suffered horrifically, and they had to let this person go. And the person then, sued, said it was retaliatory, and said that they were set up to fail, that the business supposedly, they claimed, cooked the books and destroyed their own, bookkeeping to frame this person, to fire her in retaliation for what she said. And so that's ridiculous. That's like a two-dwelling landlord, getting angry at their subleaser and burning down the whole house. And when I raised this as to the attorney from the Department of Labor, how this couldn't be, I said, why would they sabotage your own business and owe taxes to get? And she said, it's amazing the length employers will go to strike back at employees who are trying to do the right thing. So that's what you're up against sometimes, and it's really, I think, for small business, it can be overwhelming. And I think it comes back to the issue of why it's important to have this EPLI coverage, as you're saying, why it's, when you say you recommend it over fire, what I hear from that is that, a fire, obviously you want that insurance, but it's more rare. It doesn't happen often. And the EPLI claims can just keep coming. So, to your point, that's my take on it. I don't know what your thoughts are, but.
Yeah, I mean, the EPLI claims keep coming, right? Whether they're legitimate or not. And there's a lot of legitimacy in it. We posted something on our social media the other day. I think the 2021 statistic for insurance fraud was somewhere in the $300 billion range. So there is that to contend with on all lines of insurance, whether it be automobile or professional lines. But it's very tricky to be an employer and to protect yourself as an employer from your employees and the general public, so to speak, right? One of my favorite policies of EPLI that I sold was to a restaurant, longtime client of mine, good friends, two owners, one owner, very business, very clean, straight and narrow. Other owner, we're going to describe him as the long beard, the tattoos, the filthy mouth, right? We'll walk around and slap girls on the butt, right?
Wow,
so
can't do that.
Owner A, I'm like, we gotta put this policy in place. We got for him. He's like, all right, don't ever tell him about it. So it's one of those where we bought the insurance on the side to make sure that they had it, and knock on wood, they're the restaurant that hasn't been sued for wrongful termination or harassment yet, right? Like you get what you get when you expect it when you go there, I guess, kind of thing. But even if a customer felt threatened or endangered, they could retaliate with legal action. So as an employer, you just want to protect yourself from all things that you should protect yourself from, because you don't want to lose your business or your home or your assets or anything else over one of these cases where you are then stuck defending yourself against something that happened, and then you can't afford your legal bills. Then what do? You have no choice but to close the business at that point. And I'd hate to see anybody have to really go through that. We saw a lot of claims during COVID, wrongful termination, whistleblower, people afraid to go back to work, people afraid to go to work. I think there was a huge spike during COVID, and it's changed a lot of the policies that we write today, mostly in premium and deductible, right? We've seen the premiums go up and the deductibles go up. The coverage, the base coverage of first party, third party, retroactive, and wage and hour sub-limits have pretty much stayed the same. But there's definitely been some changes in the marketplace.
Indeed, there have, and the environment that we're in, all the things, that, we're actually at a commercial break. When we come back, I'll ask you about, Aaron, in terms of any trends that you foresee based on changes in the workplace. We've got a work from home workforce going on. We've got, the Great Resignation. We've got this phenomenon called quiet quitting. I did a couple webinars on how this impacts employer litigation risk. But when we come back, I'd love to hear your take on it, and also just, we'll talk about your agency, what you do. So stick around, folks. You're here listening to or watching Employment Law Today. I'm your host, Eric Sovereign, and our guest tonight, Aaron Levine, CEO, founder of the LG Insurance Company. Stick around to Talk Radio NYC, and we'll be right back.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
In a post-COVID world, you may have many unanswered questions regarding your health. Are you looking to live a healthier lifestyle? Do you have a desire to learn more about mental health and enhance your quality of life? Or do you just want to participate in self-understanding and awareness? I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each Thursday, I will tackle these questions and work to enlighten you. Tune in every Thursday at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will be frank about health to advocate for all of us.
Calling all pet lovers.
Pet Avengers, assemble!
On the Professionals and Animal Lovers show, we believe the bond between animal lovers is incredibly strong. It mirrors that bond between pets and their owners. Through this program, we come together to learn, educate, and advocate.
Join us live every Wednesday at 2 p.m. at talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to Employment Law Today. I'm still your host, Eric Sauber, employment law attorney, and here tonight with Aaron Levine, founder of the LG Insurance Agency, which sells various types of comprehensive insurance, including the EPLI, our topic tonight, Employment Practices Liability Insurance. And, you know, in these times, really, we're seeing someone talking about what it is, what it covers, what it costs, what it protects. And so I want to ask Aaron a question about some recent changes in the workforce. So I've been very busy with a lot of employment law, consulting, compliance, more than my business law practice in terms of just all the changes in the law. And I'm wondering, Aaron, from an insurance perspective, in terms of claims, raising claims rather than risk going up, how do you foresee, or what trends do you see in the workforce based on work from home, resignation, all the changes we have going on today?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'm going to be short on answering it.
That's okay.
I think there's a push to bring some people back to the office place, especially in New York City. There's a push for some shared time. I live in a commuter town, so to speak, and I have a lot of friends that have to get on the boat 2 or 3 days a week now to go back into Manhattan, which I think is good. Being together brings creative opportunities. So I think it's super important for that. Bless you. But as an employer, you know, when we picked up our phones and our laptops in March of 2020, I downsized my office space and I allowed my employees to make a choice when it was acceptable to then come back, whether they wanted to come back in person or work from home, and everybody's mostly stayed home. And so I've limited people in the office on occasion for one-on-ones and group activities, and we try to get together for a social event once every other month or so. You know, so between the way that I'm operating my business, you know, I want to make sure that my employees are comfortable. I know some people that have moved to Florida and their companies are doing a callback. I'm curious to see how those situations work out. Those are the companies that are going to be calling you for advice because they're not going to know how to handle it.
Probably. How the commute from Florida back to the,
because you know there's quite a few tricky situations out there, and then there's going to be exceptions made for some. And why did you make an exception for that person and not for me? So I see a lot of issues, and you know I see some strong negotiating occurring between employees and employers to find that common ground. It's when you're not flexible and you're not working together, employee-employer, that situations can arise unless it's a hard stance employer-based, and you know then you're going to take what's going to come, right? So there's definitely some issues. Great resignation. Everybody's short on labor, right? Everybody's short of help right now, regardless of the industry, whether it's professional service, bus companies, right? Where's the bus drivers? You know, those stick out in my head big time. We lost all the bus drivers, and you know, and restaurant and the hospitality space. We're short on cooks. We're short on servers. You know, I write a lot of insurance in the hospitality space. I love insuring restaurants. It's kind of my niche, and they are in high need of employment practices liability insurance. Because it's maybe not you as the owner, it's the manager that does something stupid, makes that mistake where you get sued for not protecting the under employee as well. So I'm going to let you, take a minute and speak on the Great Resignation and where you see things going. Also curious.
Sure, absolutely. I definitely see an increase in potential risk of claims. I think that a couple of things happen. Number one, I think with the work from home, for example, you've got different states laws apply around paid leave and around who can come in under what circumstances, what an accommodation request looks like to stay home based on disability. That's a factor. I think that you're gonna have a lot more conflict and disputes between employers and employees because you have a clashing of interests. And I think that often will bring the risk, increased risk of lawsuits. With respect to the Great Resignation, what I found and noticed is that when people are resigning in say larger numbers, if they don't have another job lined up per se, some might think, well, I've got nothing to lose by making a claim of hostile work environment, a claim of a toxic work environment, a claim of constructive discharge, and see what sticks. And so they might be trying to negotiate, use that claim to leverage higher severance. And again, I'm not trying to imply that there are no situations that exist, valid ones of people being pushed out of work for abuse, and there's no excuse for that, toxicity, racism in the workplace. But I do see that what I'm seeing is there are more and more, I guess there's more room for clashes, Aaron, and therefore more chances for litigation, which means I'm getting more calls, and but I can call you and tell my clients to come to you, which brings me to a final question for you, which is like, how does LG Insurance Agency work with business owners, and also what methods or philosophies distinguish you from other, insurance consulting firms?
Yeah, I tell everybody I'm a simple guy, right? I'm available, right? I just make myself available. I create time for people who are then worth my time, and potential business owners are worth my time. And I love to have initial conversations. I have a great team to handle setting up the insurance products behind it, but leading the charge. But I love speaking with employers long before there's an issue, right? Let's get to it early. And we can also review current EPLI policies and make some recommendations or some changes, and see what might be better for you as an employer, right? Every business owner, every business is going to have a different risk tolerance level when it comes to coverage, coverage amounts, coverage breadth, and also the deductible that comes with it. So there's a lot of different things that we can do, and we have the availability and the ability and the knowledge to understand how those things work. I said earlier, talk to your local insurance agent, your professional that you rely on for everything. He might not be an expert. She might not be an expert. They might not be an expert.
Sure.
That's where agents that work with you have that additional resource, where I can shoot you a text, Eric, I've got this question. How should we maybe approach this? Sure. We get a little bit of free advice in there, right?
Sure.
You're giving your knowledge to be able to help somebody proactively, and then in turn, they may need your services at some point. So we want to just consult. We want to be there for employers. I don't want to just sell an employment practices liability policy to you. It's not worth my time or effort or my risk to have a single piece of the pie. I want to make sure we're working on the full program, and then also put some of those value added pieces in there, like the mineral relationship to help you with employee handbooks if you don't have that already set up through another relationship, right? That costs me money. I pay $7,000 already this year for using that services to give it away for free, right? So I'm paying for it so that I can then give it away. And I love being able to do things like that, to differentiate myself, like you said, being able to offer services and consult and guide and manage risk or mitigate risk, however we want to put it. At the end of the day, we don't want to claim. That's the worst thing that we could have. We want good insurance, but we never want to use it.
Yes.
Right. And when it's there, everybody wants the best. But if you buy the cheapest, you're not going to have the best. So you want to make sure you have the right value mix in the middle. That's the right setup for your business.
Sounds great, Aaron. It really sounds truly terrific. I'm glad that you're sharing this with us tonight. We've got about 2.5 minutes left till the end. So I'll turn the floor over to you to also share about any podcast, or how we can contact you, like website, contact information, upcoming events? The floor is yours.
Yeah, I'm leaving right now, headed to an event. I'm out networking a lot down in the Jersey Shore. I'm headed to Atlantic City to do an event that I'm sponsoring for real estate contingency. But I have my podcast. It's the ... and insurance podcast, because we talk about a lot of other topics besides insurance. And Eric, I'd love to have you as a guest one of these days.
I love that. That'd be great.
I think we need to continue this conversation because we have so much more that we can talk about. But find me on Instagram. We do a lot of fun stuff on Instagram at Luxury Group INS. Same thing on Facebook. And then Aaron Levine on LinkedIn. It's CIC MBA on my LinkedIn. This handsome mug. Connect with me. Ask me any questions that you might have, and I'm happy to share.
Excellent. Yeah. Great to have all the information, Aaron. I'd love to be a guest on your podcast as well. I think this is the conversation definitely worth continuing. And, I want to thank you again so much for being here on the show with us tonight. This is a really great conversation. I was saying to you earlier, it's amazing how the time flies. People often ask me, what can I cover in, we have a whole hour. I'll never get this. There's not air to fill. And then these topics are so important, and they're just so rich and in depth. So I want to thank you again, Aaron, for being on the show. That's Aaron Levine, CEO and founder of the LG Insurance Agency. You can reach Aaron at all the places he mentioned on social media and his website. And when we come back next week, we'll have more guests to discuss some interesting, compelling issues and topics of the day. So if you like the show tonight, you found it interesting, tell your friends, tell your colleagues, tell your family, tell your clients to tune in Tuesday nights at 5 p.m. To 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to Employment Law Today. Tune in at 6 o'clock for some great shows also after this. But for that, I want to again say, Aaron, it was a pleasure speaking with you, my friend. Have a wonderful evening. All the best to you and your family, and wishing everyone here a great night and a good week. And we'll be back next week on Talk Radio NYC.
Thank you.